The progressives of our times, they always claim that they are the modern version of the Mu'tazila. And the Mu'tazila, as it is well known, were the first group in Islam to really and truly challenge the Quran and Sunnah based upon what they perceive to be intellect and logic. Of course, the Mu'tazila challenged it based upon pure Aristotelian philosophy. When the ideas of Aristotle and Plato and Socrates were introduced into the Ummah and were translated into Arabic, the Mu'tazila were the ones who swallowed it basically, pretty much all of it. And they then viewed the Quran and Sunnah from that perspective of Aristotle. And they tried to do what Khalid did in our example, to pick and choose and to manipulate and twist the text to come forth with a new version of Islam. An Islam that they felt was better than the Islam that the masses understood. And so the modern progressives love to say that they are the Mu'tazila, that they are now at the cutting edge, if you like, of ijtihad. However, I claim that the Mu'tazila were far, far superior to the modern progressives, much better than them. And it is an insult to the Mu'tazila for the progressives to claim that they're following in their footsteps, even though the Mu'tazila are a heretical evil group according to all Sunni scholars. But I say it's an insult to them for the progressives to align themselves with them. Why? For three reasons. Firstly, there was some religiosity amongst the Mu'tazila, meaning that many amongst them, if not, well, not all of them, but many amongst them were actually outwardly religious. They prayed, they fasted, they avoided the major sins. Yet, the modern group of progressive Muslims, for the most part, are not practicing at all. At all. Not just that, but you will never, ever hear one of these progressives stand up in a gathering and talk about spirituality, coming closer to Allah, earning Jannah, praying the prayers on time. I mean, things that are a basic part and parcel of any religion, not just Islam. You will never hear a progressive talk about this. Never ever do they talk about issues of the heart and soul. So there's no, if you like, inclination to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in fact, the Progressive Muslim Union of America, the PMU, this is the standard body of the Progressives of America, the PMU, the Progressive Muslims of America. There was a major crisis last year, or was it 2 years ago, when they banded, they got together, they had a few conferences, and then they pretty much shattered amongst themselves. And one of the main reasons was that there was no unified methodology about what progressivism is. One of the progressive people on the board, I don't want to mention names here, one of them wrote a scathing critique, even though he's a progressive. And if he were in this type of audience and gathering, he would ridicule all of our customs and beliefs. Yet, he was ridiculing them. And he said, I couldn't believe that these people call themselves Muslims, and they looked down and ridiculed me when I refused to drink alcohol with them. They looked down and ridiculed me when something which is in the Quran, and he was progressive, as it was, in my opinion, alcohol is prohibited, and they have the right to have their opinion. But they were making fun of me and calling me a fundamentalist when I refused to drink with them on the table. This is one of the critiques that he's writing of the PMU. So there's no concept of spirituality amongst this group. Secondly, the Mu'tazila, despite their theological deviancies, I mean, some of them have beliefs of kufr, they were overall interested in religious sciences. So you found great ulama amongst the Mu'tazila, especially in the sciences of fiqh and usul and balagha. Az-Zamakhshari, the famous alim, was a Mu'tazili. Many people come to mind. In other words, they cared about knowledge. They studied it. However, in our times, the progressives simply do not care about anything. The Quran, Sunnah, nothing. They've never studied the academics of Islam. Not at all. Very few amongst them can quote you ayat and a hadith, and literally we can mention these people, the Khalids of our times, on the fingers of one hand. The progressives are hundreds and thousands of leaders, but the people who have actually studied a little bit of Islam, we can count them on the fingers of one hand. They don't care about the academics of religion. Thirdly, what separates the modern progressives from the Mu'tazila is that, and this is a very interesting point, despite the theological deviancies of the Mu'tazila, despite their abhorrent and evil opinions, the Mu'tazila, denied qadr, they denied Allah's knowledge, they said this and that, whatever. In the end of the day, the issues that concern the Mu'tazila were noble issues. Issues of importance, of Allah, of His names and attributes, of the Day of Judgment and the signs of the Day of Judgment, of the issues of qadr, I mean, these are mighty and serious issues. So it shows that they're concerned about theology, concerned about this religion. As for the progressives, all they're concerned with is the size of a woman's scarf getting smaller and smaller, and that women should lead us in prayer, and that the hudud and cutting the hands are backwards, and this and that. Look at what they're concentrating on, gender roles and stuff which is not the primary thing of any religion. You never hear the progressives talk about deep theological, doctrinal issues. It's not an issue of concern to them. Rather, they're arguing for free speech. I attended a conference in Copenhagen. One of the leaders of the progressives, one of the most famous spokespersons, and she appears in every single magazine. Whenever there's an article on Islam, she's almost always in there. She said about the cartoon controversies in Denmark, it's about time the Muslims stop treating Muhammad like a god and let the people do what they want. He was a man. This is a person who claims she's a Muslim. Stop treating this man like a god and allow people to say what they want about him. A'udhu billah. This is what she's arguing for in a Muslim conference. She's getting angry at the rest of the Muslims. Why are you causing this to be an issue? This is what they're arguing about. Under the guise of free speech, they want people to insult Allah and His Messenger. Under the guise of freedom, they want morality and sexuality and promiscuity to increase. They want to decrease the hudud. Some of them are calling for a moratorium on the punishments in Islam because they're too confused and barbaric. This is the topics that they're concerned with. Not about Allah, not about the hereafter, not about Jannah and Nar, unlike the Mu'tazila. So I say that the modern progressives are not similar to the Mu'tazila. They are far worse than them. But having said that, there is still an element of similarity. I mean, the psychology of the two groups is the same. And primarily, what unites these two groups is the utter disdain they have for the explicit text of the Quran and especially the Hadith. The Mu'tazila rejected Hadith. The progressives also reject it in toto, completely. They don't care. It's like all these books compiled 300 years later, we don't care about them. And the psychology of looking at the Quran and the Sunnah. One of the scholars of the Mu'tazila, Amr ibn Ubayd, he was one of the founders of the Mu'tazila. He said, if Tabbat Yada Abi Lahab is written in the Lawh al-Mahfuz, Tabbat Yada Abi Lahab, if it is written up there, I don't believe this is in the Quran, it's a fake, forgery. But if it is in the Quran, he said, Allah has no excuse to punish mankind. Think about it, it's a theological point. If Allah has decreed that Abu Lahab will go to the fire of hell, the Mu'tazila denied Qadr. Okay? So Abu Lahab was living, alive, and the Quran comes down, he's going to go to the fire of hell. Amr ibn Ubayd said, if Allah has decreed that he's going to go to the fire of hell while he's living, how can Abu Lahab possibly escape that fate? What's his fault? It's not his fault. So he said, if Tabbat Yada Abu Lahab is a part of the Quran, there is no excuse for Allah to punish anyone. In another reported incident, Amr ibn Ubayd was quoted the hadith where the angel comes and writes down the qadr while the child is in the womb of the mother, writes down everything. And the isnad was quoted to him. And this isnad, the chain of narrators, is like the sun, meaning that it is composed of luminaries that every basic student of hadith knows. And so Amr ibn Ubayd said, if I had heard Al-A'mash was the first narrator, say this hadith, I would have accused him of lying. If I heard it from his Shaykh Zayd ibn Wahab, I would have said that you are mistaken, it's not possible. If I heard it from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, I would have said the Prophet ﷺ could not have said this. If I heard it from the Prophet ﷺ, I would have rejected it and not accepted it. And if I heard it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I would have told Allah, you could not have created us for this reason. Look at the arrogance. This arrogance, yes, it is exactly the same amongst the Mu'tazila as it was amongst the modern progressives. They don't care what the Quran says. They simply do not care. It's not an issue to them. What is the Quran and Sunnah calling me to do? They have what they perceive to be their views and they want to read them into Islam. So in conclusion, I'd like to state that progressive Islam is the attempt of some people who claim allegiance and loyalty to Islam to harmonize Islam with modern interpretations of ethics, of secularism, of equality, of freedom, of democracy, of human rights. It's not about meat eating and vegans. It's about these issues. They want to reconcile Islam with these issues, which the United Lands of Veganopolis have deemed to be of utmost importance. Freedom and human rights and democracy. And they have preconceived notions